All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be covering the exciting topic of Dynamics GP year-end closing. I'm Chris Isbell with Martin and Associates, and we're glad you're here today. And our presentation will be led by John Seamer and Roland Ensweiler, both from Martin and Associates, longtime GP practitioners. And before we start, I'd like to just take care of a few housekeeping items. First, we are recording this presentation, and a link to the recording will be sent to you in the next few days after we finish that. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A button or the chat button in Zoom to go ahead and ask that question. We'll be monitoring that and can either answer them through there or wait until the end of the session. And so at this time, I'm going to hand it over to John and Roland to talk about GP year end. Take it away, guys.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Like Chris said, both Roland and I will be doing this. I'm going to take the first half, go through inventory and receivables management. And then Roland will be doing the payables and the GL and a slight touch on the payroll module for those who are interested in payroll. So some of the things we're going to talk about are what is the timing of running the year-end closes on the various modules. I have a couple links to the Microsoft document that gives further details where you can spend your leisure time reading through that, or if you want more explanation. Or, of course, you can always contact us and we can fill you in on all the special details. Then just the various file maintenance utilities that we go through. And along the way, we'll show different parts of GP where you can run the different routines and the actual year-end close process, and then close it out with some questions if anyone has questions. These are the two main documents you can refer to for more information. The first one here is just like it says, it's details on the close process. Let's see if I can swing this over here. So that's what this document does. Actually, this is the inventory. So the main document here, and it just goes through all the different things you need to take care of to close the different modules, and then eventually the GL. Let's see here. The other link here, it talks about more. There's a whole set of resources you can access. Talk about the different close processes. So, and this will be included with the recording. Okay, now as far as the order, it's important that you follow this order. And most of these modules are optional as far as whether you want to close them or not. What we found is if you haven't been closing, say, inventory and receivables and payables ever, or even for several years, then you probably don't really have a need to do it at this point. But for those that have, it's important you follow this order. You do inventory first, and receivables and payables, fixed assets, analytical accounting, and then the GL. GL is typically, as you know, it's going to be well after your fiscal year end date. But the other ones, the inventory, the receivables, the payables, and the fixed assets, you need to do those on the end of your fiscal year. So if your fiscal is 12/31, then that would be the date that you would run these closes. Just a couple points up front. In GP, you have your fiscal periods. Let me see if I can pull this over here, show you what I'm talking about. Your fiscal periods, where you define your different calendar months or periods and whether they're opened or closed. It's best to just do this as kind of like your first step before you embark on any of these close routines. So that's taken care of. So let's talk about the inventory. So it's important that first of all, you do all your transactions for the year in sales order processing, in inventory, any adjustments, transfers you might have, post your any sales documents that are going to affect inventory. And then you can run, it's recommended you run an inventory reconcile, and that is found under the inventory utilities reconcile. Typically, you're going to run that for all items. You have a choice. You can either do it for all history or not. I will tell you, if you have many years of history, this could take a while. If you run this routinely, you have a pretty good idea of how long it's going to take. But you can either, like I said, you can either choose to include history or not. If you include history, it's going to take significantly longer than if you do not. It might be a good idea, if you have never run the reconcile before, to get a database backup of your company database before you run that reconcile, because the reconcile makes changes to items and item quantities, and there can be some surprises that maybe you didn't want to happen. If you had a backup, then you can revert back. The next step is to, for inventory, is to take a physical count and adjust any of your on-hand quantities to reflect the physical count. And then next step is to print any reports you might want. Typically the stock status report, which is going to show you your on-hand quantities. You might print a transaction history report that's going to give you details of all the various ins and outs to inventory. So once you're satisfied with that, again, I would take a backup before you actually run the close routine. What the close routine generally does is moves the current year quantities. So it sets the current year's and moves it to history. It zeroes out like the current year sold quantities that you're going to see on an item maintenance screen. There's some reports that you would see beginning year quantities like the turnover report. You also have the option to update standard cost and update the standard cost with the current cost. So let me show you where that is located. Under inventory, routines, year-end close. You can remove items. If you select discontinued items, this will remove any item that you had set the status as discontinue. You can choose to remove any sold lot attributes if you're using lots. So for instance, a lot's going to have certain characteristics. If those items with that lot characteristic have been sold, it'll remove it as part of this close process. And then as far as sold receipts, so GP keeps track of the history of all your receipts, as well as the sales that are tied to those receipts. That's how it keeps track of the cost layers of inventory. You can choose to remove any of that history where a receipt is fully consumed by sales, so the net is zero, and you can actually put in a as of date on that. And then this last checkbox down at the bottom is the to update the item's standard cost based upon the current cost field. So you would just select those options that you want and click process. It'll run. If you want to see what the status of it is, see where it's going, you can come into the process monitor off of the main menu here, process monitor, and you'll see it running here. Not so much on this module, but when we get into the later modules, you don't want to close that window until the process is complete. So that's about it for the inventory control close. Oh, well, yeah. Another thing you should do is close the fiscal periods again. We go back to fiscal period and make sure you have that closed for all of the periods up to the period that you're actually doing this for. And then of course you can take another backup in case, you know, maybe a day or two down the road you find something's not right, you can bring it back. So then the next module, receivables management. This too should be done the last day of your year. So you know you've run the inventory, handled most of well, it's going to handle all the inventory affecting activities, and then receivables is next. Let me see if I can pull that up here. Okay, just so similar to the inventory control module for the receivables, we want to make sure that all of our sales and receivables documents are entered and posted. So if you have any cash receipts that you got that last day, good thing to get those in there. If you have any shipments that have gone out, best to get those invoiced and posted. Next step, make another backup to be sure that if you have to revert, you have something to fall back on. And then we actually go into the close process. That's on the sales section under routines, year-end close. Typically, you're going to close both the fiscal and the calendar year if your two periods are a little different. You're going to close the calendar year 12/31, but your fiscal year is different than the calendar year. You would choose the appropriate one for that. But typically, you're going to close both of them. And then same thing, you just click process here and it runs through and moves the year-to-date sales dollar amounts for customer into the next period. And this is the window where you're normally going to see that this data is reset. So this year-to-date column, these would all be set to 0. Moved it over to last year when you run this close process. And some folks will use or will have reports that reference these fields. So if you don't do the close process, your report is going to show the incorrect data. So it's best to get this taken care of. And then we close the fiscal period again after that is complete. All of the sales selections. And that should take care of that. Those two are fairly straightforward. I'd say the biggest uncertainty that we've encountered is on the inventory reconcile, one of those preparation steps for the close. Reconciles can be rather lengthy and do some things, like I said, that you may not be expecting. Now I'm going to hand it over to Roland to talk about the payables and fixed assets in the general ledger.
All righty. Thanks, John. I'll start sharing my screen here. And if anyone cannot see it, please let me know. Let's see here. We'll go to Okay, so similar to the receivables year-end closing, it's the pretty straightforward. Is that posting all the transactions, the reports. The one I use mostly is the age trial balance report. There is a vendor period analysis. I don't know how many use that, but I know that a lot of people use the age trial balance and the historical age trial balance to get their information on their vendors. You install the payroll the payroll year-end, payroll, I am in payables. The payroll year-end update, but we can leave that for later. You can make a backup, and again, with these backups, it just depends on how much you want to, take up server space, whatever, with backup, especially those with large installations and or a large volume of data. What I normally do is I make a backup at the very beginning, starting from the very before we do the the inventory, and then at the end, after I'm done with GL closing, I would do a backup then. Some like to do, and if someone's doing payroll, they'll do another backup in between doing their W-2 information. But others just sometimes will just go from the backup from the beginning and leave it till the end. It just all depends on the space allotment and stuff like that. With 1099s, you can reprint 1099s. If you print the first time you go through and you print your 1099s, something looks wrong, you can edit the 1099 information, and then go back and reprint them again. So in GP, with the in the purchasing module, you can do the 1099 details for a vendor, and this is for non-employee compensation, miscellaneous for the year. You can only edit when you're in the month display. If I go to year, it will not let me select. So because it wants it to have it at the month that you're going to do the edit for that vendor. So if you make an adjustment, if you had your vendor marked as 1099 missed the whole year, but they were supposed to be 1099 non-employee, so you could zero out and change them over. There is also utility that you can use and payables to update the 1099 information. If you changed your vendor from a miss to a 1099 NEC, you could say, okay, I had him as a miss, and in box other income, and then I changed them to non-employee compensation and change it over into there. And then you could do it by vendor. I can look up my vendor, insert them, and process that vendor. And then I can do an edit list for it. I don't know if I'm going to have anything on here because this is the demo company. No, but that's what you could say. Okay, that report would give you an idea of what it's going to change for that vendor. Okay. So then you can close the year, and then closing the fiscal periods. That is an optional step, but most people usually do that. Close the year, close the tax year, and then again, it's one of those, make a backup if you wish. And so in the routines, you're in close, and just like with John within the receivables area with payables, if you have never closed them, or you've never made a point of closing them on 12/31 of every year. You can start now, but if you do that, if you start on 12/31 of this year and you do that, your invoices to date and life to date, you'll get a skewed number. But if you're not, depending on the information, it's not super important. All it does is update those pieces of information. And again, if you haven't been doing it, closing it on 12/31, January 2nd, January 31st, isn't going to be a big deal. So then, and that's for the payables module. And then we'll go to fixed assets. There we go. So with fixed assets, you want to make sure that you have closed payables before you do your fixed assets. Enter all your transactions and post any changes. And like it says, you don't want to do any retirements in a historical year. Depreciate everything to the last day of the current year and perform the GL posting. It says optional. I always do the posting just so that it's there and done. Run your reports. And normally when you do set up fixed assets, it does creates calendars out over more than the next fiscal year. It will create into I think like in ours, it has up to 2099 or 2199, something like that. And I know that one of our customers on here right now does do fixed assets, so you can check that out in GP through the financial calendar. And here's the vault. So this is 2027, and it's got these set up all the way to, okay, so 2031. So normally you can verify that there, but you can, again, I always make sure even before starting inventory, and I'm using fixed assets, I will make sure my calendars in for the fiscal periods and for fixed assets is set up. Again, the backup from the backup recommendation there from Microsoft, they're always going to say do the backup. Because if you open up if us or you would open up a case with them, they're going to say, well, did you do a backup? And well, and then they're going to say one of the recommendations they may say is try a restore and then do it again. So anyway, so if you only did your backup from the beginning, then you would have to go back that far and go through the whole process again. And today I've been doing this for a while, and today being with the way systems are now, the process runs through pretty fast, and there is disk size and everything is available. But again, it's just a decision that's how many backups do I need to do, how much do I need to involve the IT department or whatever, as to what I want to, is how many backups you want to make. I'm just going to touch briefly on payroll, unless I don't know if anybody else is doing payroll out of GP, but you don't want to install there are updates out there for the payroll year end. You want to install the latest year end update for your last payroll, or you can do it. I'm sorry, you can run your last payroll before you run that update. And once you're done with that, then you want to put in the last update of the year so that all the forms are ready for running the end of year process. And then when you get done with that, when you're done with printing your forms, then what you can do is you can install the tax tables for the upcoming year. If nobody has any questions on payroll, then I'll just move on to the next one. I'm sorry that went right to, didn't get to the GL. So what we'll do is, after running all the year-end processes, the running of the GL analytical accounting, there is a detail in there. I have not run the analytical accounting, but there is a description there how to run the analytical accounting close prior to running GL. But within the GL year-end close, after running all the modules, some will close their GL in the first week. Some will run it at the end of January. Others have waited till, somewhere March, April, when they've gotten their adjustments from their accountant or their accounting firm. With GP, you can post to the most recently closed year. So if I run my GL closing on January 2nd, or January 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and then auditing comes through in March or whatever, and there are adjustments to be made, then a GL entry can be made to the prior year without reopening it or reversing the year, so that those adjustments can be made. And what will happen is the retained earnings and the balance brought forward for those accounts will be adjusted. So that's, if you don't want to, it's just a matter of what your current process is or what process you want to stay with. You can make an entry to the most recently closed year. If you, for whatever reason, if during the process that something happened, the computer shut down, the server shut down, there was disconnection with the server there, and you had to restart the GL year-end close, what more than likely would need to happen is you would need to revert, and it was up here and it said, hey, the year closing is 2022. You would want to reverse that so that you could reclose 2021. And like you can see, the last closing date here on this one is 2024. I ran that earlier this morning. The year-end closing report will give you something like this. I know probably many of you have seen this before. With the the balances brought forward, etc. So when you run the year-end close, I'm going to run this again. You'll see this little progress bar come over. And let me put this up here. And like John had said before, you just want to verify, especially with the GL year-end close, that the process is finished and your process monitor is empty. Because maybe 2 or 3 times I've seen where something has happened and someone quit or something accidentally happened that the year-end closing was interrupted. But so let's see, we're going to close 24, or I'm sorry, 25. And now this happens here because I have, with our demo company, I have a number of transactions for, years like, the current year is 2027 in here. You may have this come up. You just want to verify verify that there isn't a GL batch that's open. Any transaction that can be posted should be posted. And then if you still get this, you can continue on, or you can give us a call and we can check it out with you to verify that everything's okay. So I'm going to continue. And there's my year-end closing. And my process monitor is empty. And my year-end closing report. And so then the rest of the processes is, again, you can close, or I should say, I'm sorry. What you'll see is company. You'll see that the year is marked as historical, and I could still make it and edit a journal entry and post to this year. You can, when I'm done making it historical year, I can close all of them. If you're asked to make an adjusting entry to the prior year, more than likely what the instruction would be to open that fiscal period or open the period where, if you wanted to do it in October, you'd have to open that period to have the transaction post, etc. And that should take care of that. So if you have any questions. Oh. Sorry, I've got. Chris, John, do you have anything to add or contradict or opinion?
I do not. Big thing is just it's nice, when they finally added whatever a couple years ago to be able to undo the year-end close. So normally when we help, we, like Roland said, we do a backup at the beginning, run everything through, and then close out the year. And you're fine.
Okay.
Let's see, we do have one question.
Yeah, I was just gonna go ahead.
Yep. We've never closed AR and AP before. We don't use TP for AR or AP reporting. Do we need to bother closing with AR and AP? No, you don't have to close those. All the close really does for AR and AP is kind of move some summary numbers around to like the last time you closed. But you can get all that information because it's all, contained already by date for the year. So if you've never closed them before, you do not need to close them. Thank you for the question. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns from anybody? Can go ahead and post them. If we don't close, will your AR and AP reports? Another question, follow-up question. If you don't close AR and AP, will your reports run from SQL be affected? No, they should not be. As long as you're running them by transaction date, you're fine. Everything's stored in GP by that transaction date anyway. So as long as you're doing that, you are good to go. If anyone ever needs any help closing, go ahead and reach out. We're happy to help and answer any questions, or schedule a time to do a year and close with everybody. But as Roland said, when you close the year, you can close it on January 1st as far as GP is concerned, if that's 12/31 is your year end, because you can still post journal entries back into 2022, and GP will take care of updating the retained earning balances and rolling any changes forward. Excellent.
All right.
Cool. Well, unless there's any other questions, the recording will be sent out, as I stated earlier, probably in the next couple days. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hope everyone has a great holiday season. And reach out if you have any questions. Thank you,
Thank
John.
you all.